Good afternoon. Welcome to Read the Right Thing. I'm your host, Eric. Let's talk about Player Piano by Kurt Vonnegut. This is Vonnegut's first novel published in 1952. It's partially inspired from Vonnegut's time where he worked for General Electric. One review at the time said, whether he is a trustworthy prophet or not, Mr. Vonnegut is a sharp-eyed satirist. So Vonnegut was essentially predicting the automation of America and the American workforce way back in 1952. The novel depicts a dystopian world where machines do almost every job. This book is not a book about what is, but a book about what could be. The characters are modeled after persons as yet unborn, or perhaps, at this writing, infants. It is mostly about managers and engineers. At this point in history, 1952 AD, our lives and freedom depend largely upon the skill and imagination and courage of our managers and engineers, and I hope that God will help them to help us all stay alive and free. But this book is about another point in history, when there is no more war, and... So that comes from the foreword from Player Piano. In Ilium, New York, where the story's set, engineers are the cream of the crop. Everyone else sort of just floats through life. The novel takes place after a war. Don't all of Vonnegut's novels take place after a war? A war that America won. When the majority of people were over fighting the war, engineers made machines and automated the American factories. They did this to keep the war effort going. When people returned from battle and returned from the war, they found that machines had taken their jobs, and they were no longer needed. Society then separated into two classes, a small top tier and a very large bottom tier. The top tier is an oligarchy of engineers and scientists who create and maintain the machines. Everyone else is on the bottom tier. The bottom tier, they don't work and don't make nearly as much money as they used to. But also their lives are technically more convenient because machines do everything and make things cheaper. This world, this society, this American society, it sort of looks like a utopia. Only Americans feel less and less content. The question the book raises is, what makes humans feel good? One answer that the book seems to provide is that humans feel good when they're needed. Humans feel good when they have a sense of purpose. Where does this purpose come from? Well, it comes from the work that people do. Is someone needed? Are they productive? When someone feels productive at work, they feel needed. They have a sense of purpose from the work that they do. Now, in this utopia after the war, human labor became obsolete. And in turn, humans, besides the engineers and a few other careers, they just weren't needed. Now, the average person, they had more stuff, but didn't make as much money and weren't needed. Sounds kind of like America today. We have iPhones, big flat screen TVs. Everything seems to be more accessible. Luckily, I think there's still jobs and plenty of careers out there that provide people with money and a passion for life. The main character of this book is Dr. Paul Proteus, an engineer, and Paul's father was one of the main engineers to create the machines. Now, Paul, he's living the American dream. He has a great job, a beautiful wife, and a nice house. But Paul is having doubts about his life. He's considering quitting his job, leaving his wife, and revolting against his company. And the question to ask is why? Why would you do that? Why would someone at the top tier who has everything want to give that all away? Now, this book, it wasn't my favorite book of Vonnegut's. I think Slaughterhouse-Five is the first Vonnegut book I read, and so far that's been my favorite. This book, it lacks the outrageous humor that makes Vonnegut's later novels so good. But I did enjoy this book, and I found it applicable to our time, which is amazing considering he wrote this in the 50s. We live in an automated society, and reading this book begged the question for me, have we or are we entering into a society where machines are taking too many of our jobs? Just the other day at the movie theater, I noticed a machine that makes all sorts of coffee. Now, that's super convenient, but there's no interaction with another person, no artistic flair or human touch to that cup of coffee. You put in your money, and the machine whirs and makes you your drink. Not as satisfying as watching a human work, even though humans can be fallible. Humans make mistakes. Yes, maybe the barista could mess up your drink and make it wrong. With a machine, it'll probably make less errors, and you'll know what you'll get every time. But do you really want your coffee made by a machine? will it ever be as good as a really good barista who makes that cup of coffee? An interesting thing about Player Piano is the machines in the book all existed during Vonnegut's time. They all existed in the 50s. He didn't create any crazy machines. Was Vonnegut a prophet, or could anyone have called this? Could anyone have seen that American society was moving towards machinery and automation? Ilium, New York is divided into 3 parts. In the northwest are the managers and engineers and civil servants and a few professional people. In the northeast are the machines, and in the south, across the Iroquois River, is the area known locally as Homestead, where almost all of the people live. If the bridge across the Iroquois were dynamited, few daily routines would be disturbed. Not many people on either side have reason other than curiosity for crossing. During the war, in hundreds of Iliums over America, managers and engineers learned to get along without their men and women who went to fight. It was the miracle that won the war, production with almost no manpower. In the patois of the north side of the river, it was the know-how that won the war. Democracy owed its life to know-how. 10 years after the war, after the men and women had come home, after the riots had been put down, after thousands had been jailed under the anti-sabotage laws, Dr. Paul Proteus was petting a cat in his office. He was the most important, brilliant person in Ilium, the manager of the Ilium Works, though only 35. He was tall, thin, nervous, and dark, with the gentle good looks of his long face distorted by dark-rimmed glasses. He didn't feel important or brilliant at the moment, nor had he for some time. His principal concern just then was that the black cat be contented in its new surroundings. Like I said, the top tier and everyone else, there's no need for them to really mingle. They even live in separate areas of town. And it's sort of like that coffee machine in the movie theater. Human interaction has dissipated. It was a very good book. I enjoyed it, especially all of the managers and the engineers. They go to this big party, and it reminds me of the corporate workforce that so many people make fun of a lot of people brown-nosing to one guy to try to get raises. These engineers, they kind of fight over promotions, and they brown-nose to just a couple people to try to really impress them. And it's also funny because they have to do stupid things like play games and dance and sing and participate in plays, that the sole reason of these activities is to verify and make them feel good about what they're doing. So if you're a fan of Vonnegut, I would say definitely check this out. It's interesting to read someone's first novel. You can definitely see he's really working through his style. You can kind of see the early renderings of what was to become. If you haven't read Slaughterhouse-Five or some of his other popular books, I would say start with those. And then if you really love those and you want to see, his first published book and see how he was kind of developing his own style, then I would check this out. But just go read Slaughterhouse-Five. So that's my review of Player Piano by Kurt Vonnegut. Have you read this book? What did you think? If you found this video helpful, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button as well. Leave a comment, tell me what you thought. And if you think you have read a book that I might like, let me know. I'd love to read it.